This series for use on BBC-B, RML480Z, 380Z and Nimbus microcomputers. These files are for use with the data retrieval packages Inform or Quest. They can be ordered from the Education Department, Anglia Television, Norwich, NR1 3JG. The price is £15. Please specify the appropriate computer and data retrieval package. Further details from your local ITV education officer.
Hello. Quite a demonstration, organised by Friends of the Earth in support of, well, you'll have seen, whales. All those people are proclaiming their disgust about the thoughtlessness and greed that has allowed whales to be brought to the brink of extinction. Now, in this programme, for the very first time, we're going to look at one group of animals only, instead of looking at lots of animal behaviour illustrated by others. And the group that we're taking are the great whales. Life began in the ocean, and it spread out onto the land where it developed. And at some point, a few million years ago, a mammal from the land went back into the sea again and developed once more into the most advanced creature of the depths, the whale, a creature like us. It's no exaggeration to say that whales have gone as far in the sea as we've gone on the land in terms of intelligence development. The trouble is they look quite different because they look like fish. They have to because they live in a fish's medium. But forget everything after that. They're anything but fish. Now, in this little drawing, it shows the head of a right whale, and we're going to look at a film of that, but if you see the drawing, you'll perhaps understand more about the film. It's a strange shape. Here's a little eye down here, a huge mouth shaped like a boat, and all this area filled with baleen plates, whalebone, that we've looked at before in this programme, but we haven't studied it in quite such detail. Here's the blowhole up at the top. Try to remember my sketch when you look at this, and perhaps some of the shape of this animal will fall into place. That great white mass that you see approaching, that could be a half-tide rock, is the nose, the upper jaw of the right whale, and the white stuff is the callosity. It's really something that was once hair and has evolved out. And it's a warty sort of excrescence on the surface of the whale, infested with parasitic worms and barnacles, crustaceans, which are different on every individual. It's called the bonnet. So that when a whale surfaces and you get a good look, you can generally recognize him by the bonnet and know which one he is. Now there's his blowhole, just behind that callosity, right in the middle, a paired blowhole. You just breathed out through it. Very placid, slow-moving creatures. They come in to breed off the coast of Patagonia, the Valdez Peninsula, where Des Bartlett filmed these, above and below the water. Right whale, because there's the blowhole. In the old days of whaling under sail, it earned its name the right whale because it was the right whale to kill. It floated when it was dead, and it carried the greatest weight of whalebone for women's corsets, spoon handles and brushes of any of the other whales. It was a great commercial success to the early whalers. Now we're looking straight down on its head, on the top of its head, and you can see the big curve of the mouth to either side, plunging away down into the rather dark, dingy water. The sea isn't very clear off Valdez. And if you follow that curve right down, you'll come to the eye. Here in profile, the curve of the mouth, that big callosity, now look right under it, there is the eye. There's one thing that's not quite complete about my little drawing here, and that is, of course, these callosities. So we ought to give this one a recognizable bonnet. We'll put a big white one on here, and then there were some around the blowholes, here, like that. And you remember a huge one down here, right above the eye. Very characteristic thing. Now, I mentioned about these whales being the right whales to kill. Well, they were. You saw in that film how easy they are to approach. And they were, in the old days of whaling under sail, the mainstay of a whaling industry. One right whale would offset the expenses, two would make a profit, and three would be something very great indeed, in those days, whaling terms. Well, now we're going to have a look at an old whaling print to try and give you the atmosphere of what it was like when men had to be pretty tough, and a lot of them didn't survive. It was pretty evenly matched. Those old chaps were hardy men and fine seamen, but they didn't do much to the stocks of whales. Things changed very rapidly after 1860. Sven Foyn, with the steam catcher and the harpoon gun, set going something from which whaling has never looked back. And the whales have been slowly decimated. It's supposed to be humane. I've seen a whale take over 4 minutes to die with a harpoon in it. The explosive head passes straight into its body, explodes. They say it's a merciful end. It's anything but. But nobody seemed to pause to think. It never occurred to people until now that whales are so advanced in their ways that you can attach human attributes to them. They understand about loss and bereavement and physical pain and fear in the way that we do. And then you see these great animals. These are fin whales, the second largest animal that ever inhabited the earth, just being winched up. There's so much meat. There are so many other ways of getting meat and baleen and bone meal without destroying these. It has gone on and on and on. Here on the flensing plan, it's slowly winched up. Stink and steam and the whistles blowing, and the end of one of the most gorgeous things that ever swam in the sea. Nobody can really be blamed. It was just a job. It's only lately that people have turned around and stopped and thought, where is all this getting us? Where is it getting the whales? 1865 is a year to remember in the bloody downhill story of whaling. Sven Foyn and his harpoon gun came out of wraps. Let's just have a look at what that infernal device has done to the world's whales since then. First of all, let's consider the total population in the oceans of the world of the great whales, 10 species of them, back in 1865. Well, then there were 3.9 million. By 1975, that had dropped to 2.3 million. Well, you might look at those figures and say, well, what's all the fuss about? There's something over half of them left. But look a little bit closer. Let's take 3 good yardstick whales. Take the blue whale, the largest animal that's ever inhabited the earth, the biggest of all whales. Back in 1865, 210,000. The humpback, the beautiful whale whose song we're going to hear later, 100,000. The sperm whale, just over 1 million, the largest of the toothed whales. Now we bring those figures up to date, and you're in for a little bit of a shock. The blue whale, what's happened to that? 13,000 left at the most, 94% destroyed. The humpback whale, terrible reduction here, 7,000, which leaves 93% destroyed. And the sperm whale from just over 1 million down to 720,000, 35%. And that, I'm afraid, is the sad picture. Now, if you're wondering if those figures are true or not, they are, because they came straight from the records of the whaling companies themselves who destroyed those whales. Now, the tragedy of all this is that whales are so scarce in the sea now that a lot of them can't find another whale. They can't pair, they can't mate, and therefore they can't produce more whales. So it's a kind of self-perpetuating disaster. And this scene we're watching while I've been telling you all these things is something that we might quite easily lose forever. These are humpback whales in Glacier Bay, Alaska, still happily at peace. The haunting song of the humpbacks. But these recordings were made well to the south in the clear waters off Hawaii. They don't normally sing up here. But it's a gorgeous sound to listen to, and we'll look at it in much greater detail later on. But humpbacks have given us a chance to look very closely indeed into whales, and scientists have found them a first-class study species. A lot of this study has been done from the air, and in the clear waters of the Central Pacific, it's no problem to see the whales actually underwater, study their behavior. And like right whales, humpbacks have got ways of being identified as individuals, so that an individual plot of the movements is quite easy to undertake. Right in the middle of the picture, if you look closely, is a calf alongside its mother in beautiful clear water, filmed by Al Giddings and Sylvia Earle in the Pacific off Maui, the island of Hawaii. Here is where they come to breed, and this is where you get a chance to study their behavior a lot. Look at the flippers, immensely long in relation to their bodies, and flippers that they use all the time for flippering, thrashing the water. There's about 14 foot of flipper there. Is it play? Is it amusement? What is it? But the patterns under the flippers are all different, and under the flukes, and that will tell one individual from another. Flippering and fluking are great bits of whale activity, but this is a different whale. These are right whales. You see straight away that that flipper is a totally different shape. It's like a human hand in a mitten. It shows the skeleton structure underneath it, because the forelimbs of whales are developments from the forelimbs of the quadruped mammal that went into the sea all those millions of years ago. All the bones in a whale have the same relationships. The only difference is that the hind limbs have gone, and those great flukes are not supported by bones at all. The backbone tapers away into the narrow tailstock, just where the flukes begin. But thrashing the water with the flukes is a pastime that has all kinds of uses, all kinds of purposes that have still to be investigated. It's easy to say it's play, but the signal of a great noise like that must pass through the ocean for a long way. It could be to attract attention to others. It could be to rid the skin of lice. And now breaching. This has to be the most exciting thing whales ever do. To have the chance to see it is the greatest possible excitement. The whole body hurled out of the water. Some other whales you'll see clear completely, like a salmon. Again, why do they do it? Very often in confined waters, they do it because of disturbance from ships. These, perhaps, are doing it for courtship, or maybe, again, just for fun. One of the problems with whales, especially looking at film, is not really seeing the proper shape. So I've sketched a few out so that you can see the profile. Here's the big blue whale, and I've done them roughly to scale. The humpback underneath with these tremendous long flippers. The right whale that we were looking at is one of the most extreme shapes of all, because you remember that very deep throat that it had. The eye down here, and those rather funny flippers. No dorsal fin. The others have all got dorsal fins. And no pleats in the throat either. A great big mouthful of whalebone. Now these are all cetaceans. Cetaceans, the name of the order of warm-blooded marine mammals. But what about dolphins? Let's have a look at some dolphins, because they're just as much whales. Because they're so small, and happily so numerous, you tend to forget that. These are Pacific white-sided dolphins in Baja California, romantically called the Sea of Cortez, that extraordinary long inlet from the Pacific, running up off the coast of Mexico. Schools like this travel so fast. This movement of porpoising that's copied by other marine mammals. So now let's add another one to our little collection here. It'll be very small indeed, because I'm trying to do them in scale. And that's just a little dolphin. No special kind, but just a dolphin. Now, between the little dolphins and the big whales is one more that we really have got to look at. And again, to scale, he looks something like that. Paddle-shaped flippers. Same flat tail flukes. All cetaceans have their tails flat, horizontal. Fish have them vertical. In the middle of it, the back, a very tall fin like a knife blade, and that's the orca, sometimes rather unfortunately called a killer whale. And you can look at it this way. It's either a big dolphin or a little whale. It doesn't much matter, but they're all cetaceans. Now, let's look at an orca and see how they carry on. There's an orca in the picture, and off she goes. I say she because that is a female, because that back fin is curved. The males have a tall, straight fin like my drawings. And this is off the coast of Patagonia again, coming right inshore after sea lions. And that's one of the staple diets of the orcas. Sometimes they'll nearly beach themselves in their anxiety to grab one. Occasionally they do grab them. It's no coincidence that Patagonia keeps cropping up. It's a very special place in this study of whales. It's a desert coastline, that's what it's all about, and the little towns that are there are so small and so few and far between. There's very little shipping, no disturbance, and a great deal of other wildlife besides whales. There are huge penguin colonies there, a lot of sea lion colonies as well. So it's an excellent place. It's a place where Roger Payne has done a tremendous amount of study. He's dunking his hydrophone here into the ocean, and he's under sail, so that there's no engine noise, no interference, and he and his helpers are getting up from the depths everything they could possibly want in the way of whale sounds, and then they play them back. There are the divers below the boat, the hydrophone in the depths, emitting the sounds of whales in order to investigate the effects that this will have on whales nearby. And straight away a humpback appears, answering a call. Maybe one day we'll be able to decipher them. Roger Payne is certainly doing his best, plotting the sounds and the textures. Perhaps those little sonograms that he was doing will lead us one day to understanding the actual language of whales. And it is a language. They are, make no mistake about it, they're speaking. And perhaps if we can understand it, we can do something to save the few that are left. It's ghastly when you think for the 100 years that have preceded all this, all we've learned is how to kill them. But now people like Roger Payne all over the world are doing their utmost to save them. And come to think of it, you could do the same too. You could join one of the many organizations that are totally dedicated to saving the last whales. Just think about it. What a terrible indictment on this generation if we let these gorgeous things slip forever off our planet. Goodbye now.